Okay, well, thanks very much, everyone, for inviting us along this afternoon. Myself and Sally, we're community bankers, so our role's quite strange in that we don't try to sell people anything. So we're not going to ask you for insurance or anything like that at the end of it. What we would normally do would go out to the communities to speak to people face to face, but obviously with coronavirus, this last 12 months has been impossible to do that. So we're doing a number of events via Zoom and also Microsoft Teams. And what we're doing this afternoon is basically going to talk to you a little bit about frauds and scams. A lot of it is what I would say is common sense stuff. So a lot of it's like a refresher more than anything else. But again, it's basically just to advise people that this is still very much a massive problem. And people are losing lots and lots of money. And we're just really sort of basically sort of forewarning is forearmed effectively. And it might be that you might pick up one or two little tips from the talk this afternoon that perhaps you might want to share with friends or family. But at the end of the day, we're all looking basically to support each other and also basically just generate a conversation amongst people. So that basically if this whets your appetite to find out a little bit more about frauds and scams, then we can signpost you to some websites with a lot more data, because with information, I think, comes power. So before we get into it, I just want to sort of say that from the bank's point of view, there is a difference between a fraud and a scam. From a victim's point of view, they've had their money stolen. But from the bank's point of view, a fraud is an unauthorised withdrawal. So basically, someone goes into your branch, cashes a cheque pretending to be you, or hacks their website. Then basically that's unauthorised by you, and you've got legal rights and we've got responsibilities to return that money to you. A scam is subtly different, and that's basically when you've been tricked or coerced into making a payment to somebody you believe to be genuine at the time. And unfortunately, if you make that payment, there are no rights or there isn't any responsibilities for the banks to give you that money back. So effectively, you've lost it. There is some good news in that there is an authorised push payment voluntary code of practice, which the top 9 banks have agreed on back in 2016. Whereby if someone makes an electronic transfer, and I have to stress it's only electronic transfers, it doesn't include checks or cash or any other type of payment, then there's a possibility you might get that money returned if you've been scammed. Again, though, we don't want people in that position whereby they're having to fight with the banks to try and get their money back. When we go through the slides, we'll mention a few sort of statistics as we go along as well. But the first one I just want to draw to everybody's attention, even though we were locked down last year, there was a 9% increase in UK crime last year, solely driven around frauds and scams.
So you'll see on the next slide there some coloured bubbles. So the criminals don't care who they target. They don't care if you're male, female, what age you are, what sex you are, what colour you are. They just want your money. So anyone and everyone can be affected by scams. And we probably all had some approach in some way. We know at the moment that 53% of victims are over the age of 55. So this stat was actually over the age of 65 about a year ago. But because more and more people are at home, more people are using the internet, a lot of youngsters are being caught out now on apps on their phones and messages appearing. Sadly, only 5% of scams are actually reported. And in the UK in 2019, the loss to the UK was £1.2 billion. I think that figure is a lot more now. And if you think that's only 5% of what we know, you can see what a major problem this is.
So the slide here we've got is what they call the cycle of victimisation. If you've been identified as a potential target, you'll probably go onto some form of list. And then these lists are actually passed and sold around different criminal gangs. You may have been identified because you may have answered a market research telephone call. You may have lost money through a scam before. You just might be unlucky and be targeted by these guys. But what tends to happen, though, is that once you're on this list, then you will be targeted in a number of ways over a period of time. I would just say that basically it's very difficult to get off these lists, and the only way to actually get yourself off these lists is by not interacting with the criminals. So again, that's things like if the phone rings that you don't speak when you answer the phone, you let the caller speak first of all, that you automatically delete emails, any sort of nuisance emails that you put straight into the spam or the junk folder, so they automatically get directed there. But what these guys are looking to do, they're looking to make some sort of connection with you, get you into a dialogue. And as soon as you've done that, then basically they'll be looking to collect more and more data from you.
So they are the product of organised predatory criminals. Scammers will just need to gain your trust and then they can exploit and steal your money. So they use a lot of what we call befriending and grooming techniques. So they may approach you legitimately. They may say they're from a company that you use, or they may even say that they're a friend. And they will always come across as helpful and friendly, and they will try and help you resolve a problem that they've maybe come across. Maybe it's your internet slow and they want to help you because they're your internet company, etc. Sadly, if you don't play ball with them, they quickly become very aggressive and threatening. We've had many customers say that phone calls have turned quite intimidating, and people tend to give their money or their details away at this point because they think by doing it, they're going to get rid of the criminals. Unfortunately, you just get put in that cycle and you get more and more approaches from different people. So as Mark said, the idea is that we need to break that cycle, and by stopping any communication, we'll eventually do that.
So we're just coming out of lockdown number 3. Unfortunately, criminals will use any sort of excuse to contact people to camouflage their intent. And unfortunately, over the last 12 months, we've seen a lot of coronavirus-related scams. During lockdown 2, just before Christmas, there was £4.6 million lost through coronavirus-related scams. So whilst most people are still aware, that you wouldn't sort of be approached by the World Health Organization directly with regards to booking a vaccination appointment, these guys are still making a large sum of money from their tactics. They'll tend to fall into several categories. The first one is an impersonation scam or an email. So that could be a text or it could be an email whereby they're offering health updates, cures, requesting charitable donations. And as I said, they could be claiming to be representing from the World Health Organization or the NHS. But what they'll tend to do, they'll tend to have a hyperlink attached to the text message or a document attached to the email, and they'll encourage you to click on these. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But what tends to happen though is if you do click on these links or these documents, you'll either be taken to a faked or cloned website, and then you'll be asked to log in personal details. Again, they're hoovering your data. The more information they have about you, the more sophisticated the scam can be. Or they'll download malware or spyware onto your phone or your computer. And again, this is where they can then look at your emails. They can see if they can hack into any of your applications that you've got on your phone or your computer. The other type of coronavirus scams are the too good to be true deals. Again, these were emails, adverts on social media, posts, phone calls even. Initially, they were advertising face masks and testing kits, but now it's more sort of vaccines and vaccine appointments.
So you'll see on screen now some text that we've seen over the last sort of 12 months. And Mark, if you can just make the first one a bit bigger for me, please. Some of these were seen at the very, very beginning of the pandemic. So the first one tells us that we're all going to get some money from the government to help us battle through the COVID-19. And if you see the blurred blue line there, that's the hyperlink that Mark's talking about. So it's asking us to click on that link to give you bank details over so that they could pay us the money. Obviously, it was never going to be money from the government. We weren't due any money at all. And that link would just take you to either a fake government website that the scammers would be running, or as Mark said, it would download some spyware onto your device. Now that spyware, what it does, it can actually download software that follows your keyboard movements. So it can actually see all your pins and passwords and everything you're typing into your keyboard. So it's very important that if you ever get a text from any main organisation with a hyperlink in it, you do not click on the hyperlink. So we'll just look at the next two. Again, they're ones that we saw at the very beginning of the pandemic, where they were saying you were going to be fined because you were seen outside of your property on 3 occasions. And you see the last one there, it's a rather large fine of £3,500 for leaving your property without reason. And yes, in the last lockdown, we did have a £200 fine for if you were travelling and it was not necessary travel. But again, you would never, ever going to be asked to click on a link or go to the government website to pay your fine. They would just not have done it that way. So please, if you get anything, whether it's NHS, police, your bank with a hyperlink, always contact the company directly. So always source the number yourself. So find their phone number on their website. Your bank's number is on the back of your debit card. So always phone that number and always go direct to them and find out whether the message was genuine or not.
And just before I go on to the next slide, the UK government website was updated about 3 weeks ago. They've just released some more resources and material to raise awareness around coronavirus-related scams. There's things like posters and a guide, and I'd recommend that people have a look at that. The government website is very straightforward, just www.gov.uk. So this is an example of a smishing text from NatWest Bank. Again, this is one that we've seen, well, probably the last year or so, I think, really. But again, it's designed basically to make you sort of to respond straight away, to react straight away. What they're saying in this particular text message is that your mobile number's been updated. If you don't recognise it, click on the hyperlink. These are designed basically for you to knee-jerk respond. And basically, there's a statistic that says that 1 in 4 people realise as soon as they've hit the button or they've made that transfer, they get that sinking feeling, but they realise afterwards that they've rushed and they've made a mistake. So again, these things, anything that's designed to make you feel uncomfortable or to make you rush in any sort of way should be held at distance. And again, as Sally's mentioned, the take 5 symbol there, just give yourself a couple of minutes to think through what's really being asked of you here. Now, mobile phones are sometimes called smartphones. Unfortunately, they're not very smart. As you see on the phone there, we've got NatWest on there. So sometimes you might get a text message come through from your bank or from somebody that you know, and the name will come up, and that's what they call an alpha tag. Unfortunately, criminals can actually spoof alpha tags, and they can send out text messages purporting to be from the bank or the HMRC or any other organisation. And this is where there's a problem with smartphones, in that they can't differentiate between a genuine text message, a genuine alpha tag, and a spoofed alpha tag. And what will happen is that if you are corresponding with a particular company, for instance, in this case, NatWest, and you get a spoofed text message from a criminal purporting to be from NatWest, your phone will put them in the same chain of communication, in the same conversation. So it becomes very difficult to ascertain if it's a genuine or a faked text message. But what we say to people is don't worry too much about where it's come from. Spend your time looking at the body of the message. Are they asking you to click on a link? Are they asking you to phone up a number? Is it making you feel uncomfortable? If so, then give yourself a few minutes before responding. The second one here is basically a spoofed email. And again, last year with the changes in the regulations around the TV licenses, the crooks were using that as a way of contacting people by email. And again, you need to be very careful before you open up any links or connections with any documents on emails. Again, criminals will try to spoof or disguise the email address. So for instance, my email address is mark.mullally@natwest.com. But if they were to set up an email address of mark.mullally@notwest.com, if you have a very cursory glance at it, you might think, oh, that's a genuine one. I'll click on the hyperlink. Before you know it, you've made connection then with the crook. So again, just give yourself a couple of minutes to scrutinise any text messages or any emails before you respond.
Can I just ask you to stay on that screen for 1 second, Mark? I just wanted to show everybody the take 5 symbol. You'll see on the first one there, there's a yellow circle with take 5. So this is a campaign that's linked with the police, and it's about taking 5 minutes. So as Mark said, it's about thinking about what is the message asking you to do, step back from it, don't act immediately, and just take 5 minutes to think it through thoroughly before you push any buttons. So they're all types of impersonation scams, as we said. So they will come to you through a genuine phone call, text or email. They may know a little bit about you, so they may address you by name, and they'll be asking you to give some more personal details, whether it's to identify you or just to fill in forms for something. And it may even ask you to be making payments. We know that customers are being asked to transfer money to a safe account. You may have heard of this scam, and basically people are getting calls from either their bank's fraud department or the police, advising that the staff in their local branch are under investigation. So what they're asking you to do is transfer your money to what they're calling a safe account so that you can help them with their investigation. There is no such thing as a safe account. It's basically the scammer's account. So please, if anybody ever asks you to transfer your money to a safe account, please discontinue the conversation, whether it's on a text, an email or a phone call, and you must ring your bank immediately on the number on the back of your card. And we will talk about phone calls and how to make sure that that's a safe way of doing things as well in this bit. But they're always going to ask you to do something immediately. They're going to tell you that there's a problem that needs to be dealt with as a matter of urgency. So again, it's asking you not to take that 5 minutes to think it through. So if you have that take 5 in your head, nothing is ever that urgent. So you just need to think about it. And if somebody does ask you to transfer money, then it's a red flag.
So what do the crooks want? They want your money. But before they go for your money, they want your information. As I've mentioned before, the more information they have, the more convincing scam, the more convincing they'll appear to be as well. They'll start off with any basic information, your date of birth, telephone number, address, things like that. But then they can go online and look, perhaps if you've got social media accounts with, say, Facebook or something like that, they'll look to try and glean more information about you from that. Even a random phone call might give them some information that they don't know about you before, because they'll phone people up at random, and just the tone of someone's voice will give them information that perhaps they didn't know, and that might give them an indication of the vulnerability of their target. For instance, if I was to phone up and speak to a teenage boy, I might leave him alone. But if I was to pick up the phone and call somebody and it was an older female answering, unfortunately for us gentlemen, ladies tend to live longer than men. So it might well be, if she's an elderly lady, she might be on her own, potentially automatically more vulnerable for me. Well, when I used to go out to talk to people face to face, I'd always talk to the gentleman afterwards about, them keeping these crooks on the phone, because if they're on the phone talking to them, they're not targeting somebody more vulnerable. But what we need to understand is that these guys are organised criminals. They're working in gangs. There'll probably be 3 or 4 people in the office where they're calling from. They're recording all the conversations. So you might slip up and just give them 1 or 2 piece of information that you didn't intend to, and they just play it back and listen to it again. So just be really mindful of the information that you're giving out to people that you haven't been able to verify as genuine.
So what are they going to do with this data? So they're either going to impersonate you, because they've got enough about you now to pretend to be you, or they will contact you directly pretending to be a company that you use. I sadly had my data stolen last year, and just before Christmas I had a letter from a catalogue company that apparently I'd opened a new account with them, and they sent me the credit agreement and told me that the blender I'd ordered was on its way. The blender never arrived, but I did phone the company, and it turns out it's quite a common scam, not one that I'd heard of. But what happens is the criminals will harvest your data. They will then open a credit agreement with somebody, whether it's a loan or a credit card, or, as in my case, a catalogue. They would order a nominal valued product, get that sent out, and then they will change the delivery address. But the account will still be in my name, in my address, so I'll get the bills, and they're going to start ordering higher valued products to go to this new address. I had stopped it quite quickly, so nothing ever happened, but you can imagine if I'd have left it and if I hadn't noticed, it could have been quite devastating, especially to things like your credit scores later on in life. Obviously, if you're wanting to go for finance, especially the youngsters, they don't realise how much of an impact it can have. We know that data in the criminal world is worth about £800. So your data is worth £800 to someone to sell on, because they want to make an awful lot more money out of you. And we always say you should treat your data like the keys to your front door. So you wouldn't just walk along the street and give away your keys to someone so they could just let themselves into your house. So don't do it with your data. Don't let them into your lives by giving away data.
So then a little summary as to how we can protect ourselves. First of all, obviously, make sure they know who you're talking to. Again, with the banks, we'll never contact you out of the blue and ask you for card reader codes, PIN numbers or passwords. There is a catch-22 situation in that when a bank does try to contact one of its customers, we need to verify that it is the customer that we're speaking to. So we will always ask one security question, but we won't ask you 2 or 3. Some of you might recall there was an advert a couple of years ago by Barclays Bank on the television. A young girl was in a call centre and she was speaking to somebody on the phone saying, "Can you give me the first and third letter of your password?" No, so I didn't hear that. Can you give me the second and fourth letter? So again, anything like that should be a red flag straight away. Again, card reader codes. if someone phones you up and they said they need to identify you through your card reader code, that would be indication that someone's hacked onto your website, because they can't move large sums of money from online banking without a card reader code if your bank has that facility. But a lot of banks now are using two-factor authentication, whereby they'll send you a text message directly to your mobile phone, or they'll basically ask you to use your fingerprint, face, etc. Sally's already mentioned about safe accounts. The bank, the police will never ask you to move money from your bank account. Again, they're looking for you to worry, to panic straight away. Again, if you think about it logically, if the bank thought someone's taking money from your bank account, then basically we would ring fence the account. Going back to what I said at the very, very beginning about the difference between frauds and scams, as well as that, if I got the phone call tonight from my fraud department saying, Mark, someone's trying to take out £10,000 from your account, we need to speak to you about it. All I would say is, do what you need to do to protect me, and I'll phone you guys back later on to confirm everything's okay. Again, because like if the bank lets a fraud go through, they've got to give me the money back. Whereas if I transfer the money to an inverted brackets safe account, I've lost the money. You'll never receive a genuine call telling you that your internet is slow. Again, this is like BT internet. 1 in 3 people in this country have BT internet, so that's why BT is being used all the time by the criminals. Again, Microsoft, Dell computers will never phone you up at home. And again, just be mindful, if anybody asks you for remote access to your computer, asks you to download application onto your computer, just be mindful, they could be looking at your keystrokes. Always verify the caller independently. Again, if I got that phone call tonight from the fraud department saying, Mark, can you phone us back? We need to speak to you about your account. I would basically try to use a different line, first of all, because the criminals will keep if they're phoning on a landline number, they'll keep the line open, and they'll look for you to phone back a genuine number on the line they've kept open, but they'll just pass it to one of their criminal colleagues to pretend to be that department of the bank or the police or the HMRC, whoever they're trying to get you to phone. What we say as well is that if you don't have a second line to call somebody back from, then you wait about 15 minutes, because time is money to criminals as well. And if they can't get you to respond virtually straight away, they'll move on to the next target. And it's very easy for me to say, well, if you get that phone call again tonight at 10 o'clock from the bank's fraud department saying someone's trying to move money from your account, can you phone us back? Very easy for me to say, wait 15 minutes. You're thinking, well, that's my savings going out the door. I need to speak to somebody straight away. And I've only got my landline number. What we suggest is that when you pick up the phone, phone somebody that you know, friend, member of the family, someone you can recognise the voice, just to ensure that that line is clear before you pick up the phone and speak to a company. And again, if you think you've made a mistake, if you've made that transfer, if you've given out some financial details, your card details, things like that, and you're worried, let your bank know straight away. These criminals will launder the money. They'll move the money around as quickly as they possibly can. But the sooner we know about it, the sooner we could perhaps stop the transaction and recall the money as well.
So we're just going to touch on a couple of the scams that have reared their heads since COVID, really. And one of them is the investment scam. So they do target people who are quite savvy on investments. They will come to you with a great deal just for you. They're going to get rich quick and they don't want you to miss out. So they're asking you again to do something very quickly and to click on links in emails or texts in order to get this deal. I had a customer just before Christmas it was. He used to do investments quite a lot with brokers, and he got an email from his broker saying, I've got a new deal, this is the rate. It was only 1 point something, so it was quite a low rate, but if you think about the banks are offering almost next to nothing at the moment, it actually was better than he was going to get in a savings account. So he looked up the deal, it looked good, so he sent them £20,000 to start it off. Now, with this broker, he normally used to get an email the next day just confirming his deal, and he didn't get that email. So he phoned them and said, you know, can you give me some details of what's happened? And they knew nothing about it. And when he looked at the email, it, as Mark had mentioned earlier, what they'd done is just change one digit, one number in the email address, and he hadn't noticed. So he's now sent £20,000 to someone. He has no idea who they are, and now they've disappeared. So it's unlikely he's going to get that money back. But he's a savvy investor, and so they are targeting people that usually know what they're doing.
So the type of investments they're looking for people to invest in, well, basically everything, stocks and shares, gold, Bitcoin. Elon Musk, the American billionaire, put $1 billion into Bitcoin a few weeks back, took the price, I think, up think went between 33 and 50,000 US dollars. So again, this is stuff that's in the news, and this is stuff that the scammers will actually look to sort of camouflage their activities. BBC News had an article on the 26th of January where they were talking about impersonation of genuine investment firms. Total loss last year was £78 million. An average loss per victim was £45,000. One thing that I came across beginning of February was a vaccine bond scam that's going around. People were being contacted to say that the American bank Citigroup were investing monies in Pfizer, the vaccination company, and basically they were looking to give a return of 4.2% on a one-year fixed bond. The minimum investment was £10,000, but what you had to do in addition to making the application was to upload your driving license or passport as a anti-money laundering requirement. So again, these guys were looking either for you to part with your money or to collect your data. So again, we have to be really mindful. There was also an article, the FCA the other day, about some clones. I've forgotten the term now, but one of these investment comparison sites. And I actually went on and had a look at one of them, and it was very, very professional looking, very slick. But the first thing they wanted from me was a sort of a data form with all my information before they even showed me any types of returns that they could potentially give. So again, your data, your information is a valuable commodity. And a lot of these companies are there just to harvest this information, to bundle it up and to sell it onto criminal gangs.
So how are they targeting people? So unfortunately, we give away our data all over the place, and we don't even realise we're doing it half the time. I believe my data was probably stolen from a website that was hacked. So places like British Airways, Marriott, Currys PC World, they've all had their data breached. And unfortunately, we've probably all used these companies in the past, and our data's being held by them. So what happens is the criminals will steal the data, harvest it, put it all together and sell it on, as we said earlier. And we also give our data away when we do things like surveys. I think Mark mentioned it earlier. People do marketing surveys, and people also do quizzes and things on social media. A lot of the youngsters nowadays are falling victim of these quizzes that appear on Facebook. And unfortunately, the answers that the criminals are asking for are all things that people use for passwords, or they're giving information away. And when we can learn a lot from social media, it's great, isn't it, that you can contact your friends and family, especially during lockdown. But at the same token, we all know when everyone's out of their house, we know when it's their birthday, we know what pets they've got, we know what their grandchildren's names are. So do the scammers, so do the criminals, because they literally will spend time harvesting that information from your social media. So please make sure that all your settings are private on any media you're on, and you don't share anything that you don't want someone else to use.
So what do they do with your data? Well, once they've collected sufficient information about you, they'll contact you. Again, cold calling around investments was banned a number of years ago. So if you get a phone call from somebody offering you investment advice, hang up straight away. Similarly, out of the blue emails, again, don't respond. Certainly don't click on them. People that you don't know who seem to know a lot about you, again, that's an indication that they've done their homework on you. So again, that should be a red flag. And people giving you details that you think only a genuine investment company would have, for instance, previous investment or share information, again, this should be a red flag as well. Once they've got you into a dialogue, then they'll start to put pressure on you. And that could be time pressure. They might say that you're going to miss out on a fabulous deal if you don't commit before the end of the day. Or equally, they might just keep you on the phone for hours and hours to wear you down. And again, this is sort of psychological and social engineering techniques that they're using. They might also use social proof. Again, this could be like fake reviews. And I know that Martin Lewis of the Money Savings Expert website, his name and his photograph was used quite a lot by scammers and crooks on Facebook. And I know he had to take it to court. So again, any celebrities' endorsements should be questioned as well. As Sally's already mentioned, unrealistic returns. I mentioned about the vaccine, 4.2%, but again, it doesn't have to be outlandish returns. It could be just a small, something slightly higher, something perhaps that the banks on the high street aren't offering that might just sort of pique your interest effectively. But ultimately, what they'll do, if it sounds too good to be true, then it is, really. There's no probability these days.
So just in summary then on investments, so where did we learn about the investment and what checks have we done? So you should always seek independent financial advice before investing, because IFAs will always look at your short, medium and long-term needs and your tax situation, whereas the scammers won't. They're just going to take your money and run. So the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority webpage, you can actually go on there and have a look at any financial organisation. So they will show you the web page, they will show you the email address, and they will even give you details of the employees that work there. Now, they do rely on companies to update that every 12 months. So it could be that somebody has since left, but it's a good indication that the people you're dealing with, if you have had an email out of the blue, are genuine or not. But again, if you had something out of the blue, why would you be giving some money to someone that you've never met? If you want to do investing, then find your own companies, find your own recommendations and do your own homework. It's really, once the money's gone, it's very, very difficult to trace it back, and you end up losing, end up losing quite a lot of money this way.
The final type of scam we're going to cover this afternoon that we're seeing in the pandemic is friendship or romance scams. Again, everybody's heard of these, but I don't think people actually take them as seriously as they should do. These, again, are very sophisticated. They play the long game, as I'd like to call it. It could take months, sometimes years, before the scammer will make their move. So again, we're finding that people are being sort of, well, if I go back to what a scam is, I think a scam is just getting the target, getting the victim to believe into a lie. And the whole idea with romance and friendship scams is that the crooks will work on somebody to such an extent that the victim will believe this lie wholeheartedly, and therefore they can be easily manipulated. Just to give you an understanding, last year in 2020, £68 million was lost through romance scams. So again, these sums aren't small sums of money at all. These guys are organised criminals. The money they're stealing is going to organised crime. It could be money laundering, drug trafficking, human trafficking, terrorism. These guys are very determined to get the money, and they can be very, very persuasive. Just to give you an indication of the demographics of the victims, though, it's quite interesting. I always like to point it out. Females tended to be between the ages of 50 and 59, whereas males tended between the ages of 20 and 29. But again, this is not like hard and fast rule. The other thing as well that we picked up from last year was that the number of reported cases each week has gone from 110 to approximately 148 each week.
So how are they picking on their victims? So they're always going to use legitimate dating websites, friendship sites, social media, and they will always contact the victim first. So if you've got a friend or relative that's on their own and you've been contacting them once a week and they suddenly start talking about a new friend they've got, find out how this friend has come into their life and where they met them, and if they have actually really met them. Because these people will research the interests and the relationship status of their victims, and they will try and match their lives to run alongside, so that you have a lot of interests that are common. These romance scams quickly turn into love, and friendships, again, they play on your emotions, and they will eventually be asking for money. They may not outrightly ask for it, but they will hint at something they require some help with. And because you're now emotionally involved, you want to help that person. They will ask you to start chatting away from the website that you've met them on. Now, these websites have protection on the conversation. So the minute somebody asks you to start chatting privately on a WhatsApp or a mobile or a landline, then that's a red flag, and it should be a point of when you ask a question. I had a face-to-face presentation before COVID now, so it seems like a long time ago, but it's probably 18 months ago, where at this point, an elderly gentleman at a table that I was doing a presentation to got his mobile out because he wanted to show me a picture of his girlfriend. Now, he was in his 80s and she was in her 20s. They'd been chatting for a year and a half, so it'd been going on for a long, long time, and he'd not told a soul. Nobody at the residential care home that he was in knew about it, and he was now so emotionally involved in this lady's life, and she now wanted to come over from Sweden, where she was living, to meet him, but she didn't have the money for the airfare. So you can imagine what the conversation was next. You know, can you send me some money to help me out? And he was all ready to do that. You can do what's called a reverse image search on a photograph, and we did manage to find her on a catalogue. So you can find out if people's photos have been used in the past, and it does give you an indication as to whether obviously the relationship is genuine or not. Hopefully he didn't have any more contact with her, but I'll probably never know.
Before we go on to the next slide, Sally mentioned about the reverse photo image search. The crooks are using that as well. So basically, if it doesn't have to be a dating website, but if you use a number of different websites with your photograph on, it's really important that you use a different photograph for each website you've got on. Otherwise, if I'm a crook and I've got one of your the photograph that you're using, I can just reverse image scan and see what other websites you're on. So again, this is the way that the criminals are using technology to collect the data and information. So once they've built up the relationship and the trust, they'll ask for cash. Now, the cash might be for flights or a visa application or a passport application. They might be signing up a new business in the UK and they need some help getting the money organised. They might be in the army or something like that. Alternatively, they might ask you to allow them access to your bank account or to transfer money on their behalf, or even take out a loan for them, or possibly invest some money in a scheme that they're recommending. But again, this is part of the problem, is that at some stage the victim may have sent so much money that they become afraid that if they stop talking to the scammer, they'll never see the money again. And so they're caught up in a trap with no way out. And this can then lead them to sending even more money and taking out loans to maintain this. It becomes a very much a catch-22 vicious cycle.
So how are we spotting these scams? So as I said, they're always going to contact the victim first, going to ask lots and lots of questions because they need to build up the profile. They may have a very attractive profile picture, but it will probably not be them. And they're going to refuse to have any sort of face-to-face conversations with you because they don't want you to see their proper picture. They will change their story to match yours. So if something happens in your life, then their story will change so that it matches. And so you'll still have an interest in their lives. I had an unfortunate victim a couple of weeks ago, and I will share the story with you because it actually shocked me. So a lady was in her 50s. She just recently got divorced and was selling the family home. So she decided after a few weeks that she would go on a dating website because she wanted to meet somebody new. And so she met a man, and they've been chatting for quite a long time. She told him everything about her, including that she was selling her property. And just for her luck, he was in the financial industry. So he said, don't worry, I can help you sell your house. I can help you with the paperwork and take all the pressure away from you. So he promptly set up some paperwork, said to her, I'll send it to you, sign where I put a cross and send it to your solicitor. So that's what she did. So the house was sold. And so on sale date, she was waiting for the proceeds to arrive. And you can guess it never did. So she phoned the solicitors, and they actually said to her that the paperwork they'd received was actually signing the property over to this man. So the property wasn't even hers to sell, it was his now. And he did sell the property. He sold it to an investment company. Now the investment company have decided to rent the property out, and she is now the tenant. She hasn't told her family that she's lost the family home. So she's now renting the house out from this company so that she's still living there and her family don't know anything about it. And it's because she believed this man and she was so emotionally invested in him and believed every lie he told her that she's now lost her family home, all of her money. And she's very, very, she feels stupid and embarrassed. And that's why she hasn't told anybody. And probably her family will only find out when something actually happens to her.
So again, just a quick summary of how we can protect ourselves. Again, if we're in this situation like this, it can be embarrassing, but it's really important that you talk to somebody you trust, talk to them about what's happening, because basically you could get yourself into a lot more bother. Look out for the warning signs. Anything with a red flag, you should basically be sort of questioning. Who made the first contact? How did they approach you? Again, I've not so much a story so much. It's just something that happened to me November last year. I'm on Facebook. I go onto it virtually every other day sort of thing. And a friend of mine, well, somebody I used to go to school with, contacted me via Facebook wanting to be a friend. Now, I've not seen this guy, John, since I left secondary school, which was in 1982. So a good few years ago now. So out of the blue, I get this request to befriend a guy I used to go to school with. All he had on his profile was a picture of a puppy dog. I was expecting a middle-aged man, a bit like myself. But because of that, and because there's little information about this person, even though I knew the name, I declined the friendship request straight away. Now, it might be that John had a puppy dog that he was very fond of, but equally, there wasn't enough information there for me to take that risk. Again, as we said before, the scammers will try to rush things. They'll try to move things along. They'll send lots of messages, and part of that again is psychologically to give the target the feeling that the relationship has been going a lot longer than it actually has. Again, never send money. As soon as you're asked to send money or make a payment or anything financially with this person that you've not met, that should be a red flag and should stop the communication straight away. You need to report it to the website that you've met them on. In my case, it would have been the Facebook website. Equally, you need to report it to the bank because if you've given your details or you made that payment, we still might be able to protect it. And you need to report it to the police as well.
So just a few places that you can go to for more information. And I have got a longer list that I can send out to David afterwards if you want some more information. But all the banks will have their own security centre. So you'll see our one at the top there, natwest.com/security. And if you go to your own banks, or you're welcome to join the NatWest one and have a look, it's free to use and it will just give you lots of information. There's some videos and things on there. So Friends Against Scams website, you may have heard of them. They're a trading standards initiative and the bank has partnered up with them because we're trying to get the information out to as many people as possible. It's a great website. There's some online training you can do yourself to become a Friends Against Scam. It only takes about 10 minutes and it just arms you with a bit more information and the tools to go and talk to other people. As we said, if you think you have been a victim, always contact your bank in the first instance. The quicker we can get involved, the quicker we can help save your money if it has been sent somewhere. Action Fraud, that's a police initiative. So you'll remember we said that only 5% of frauds are actually reported, and that's where it's being reported onto. So they will collate all the information that people report, and they will then put a case together for the police if they believe that there's something they've got enough on. But they can only do that if enough of us report scams and frauds. So please have a look at the Action Fraud website. There's the phone number there, but you can do an online report as well. And as I say, I'll send the information out afterwards for David to share. And as we've said, you must talk about it. You're not alone and shouldn't feel embarrassed. These people are professional criminals, and a lot of people are being scammed out of their hard-earned cash. And they're people who you think wouldn't fall for a scam, but unfortunately, it's very, very common. I'll just share with you one story. My husband's got 2 motorbikes and he needed to do the road tax for them. They both run out at the same time. So he went onto DVLA website, paid for his road tax and got his receipt. But within 10 minutes, he had an email back from DVLA saying that he'd overpaid and he was due some sort of refund. And could he pop his bank details back for them to credit him? So without thinking, he went and did that. He banks with Barclays, and he then just noticed on his mobile app on his phone that lots of money was going out of his account, not coming in. So he quickly phoned Barclays and said, I think I've been a victim of a scam. You'll never guess what my wife does for a living. And he's a police officer. So it just shows you that anyone can be a victim of a scam. And he did it without even thinking. He didn't take 5. He was automatically taken in by the DVLA website, email that came in, and he didn't check it out. But it does just show you that anyone can be a victim.
Just a couple of other things around Action Fraud. If you get like a nuisance or suspicious text message, you can forward it to them on 7726. I believe it spells out spam, S-P-A-M, on the phone keyboard. Also, they've got an online reporting tool, and you'll find that quite easily, but that website is reporting.actionfraud.police.uk. And also the National Cyber Security Centre is a really good resource as well. And their website is ncsc.gov.uk. I think what we'll do now, we'll end it there. I'll stop sharing the screens, and if anybody's got any questions or anything they want to add, myself and Sally will do our best to answer those for you.
So we're open for questions.
Well, can I firstly say thank you very much, Sally and Mark, for a really scary presentation.
It's like Crime
like to
Watch,
let
isn't
people
it? Don't have
down.
nightmares.
Yeah. And you know, I know from a personal experience that you know, you can easily get drawn in. Thankfully, I didn't go all the way.
Good.
But can I just raise a question whilst others are perhaps thinking of their own? I did have a phone call from my bank, which wasn't NatWest, I'm sorry to say, because I had instigated a transfer via Western Union. And obviously Western Union is one of those dodgy sort of companies. I use it a reasonable amount, so I wasn't surprised to actually receive a phone call asking whether this was a correct transfer. I was rather pleased. But how did I know it was from the bank?
Was it automated?
No, it was a real person. But I know when I ring my bank, they want all sorts of information about me.
Mm.
Why
So what?
Why doesn't
Sorry.
my bank hold a password that I can give them to make sure that it's a genuine call?
Mm. We do have a security ID password with our customers, and we always say, can you give us the third letter and the fifth letter or something like that? But I think if you follow the rule of if you're unsure if it is somebody you recognise, so you didn't know it was your bank, it may have come in with a number on your phone saying it was your bank, but again, unfortunately, that can be spoofed quite easily. You should always say, fine, I'll ring you back. Make sure you've got a clear line, either ring a friend or do it on another line and ring your bank back on the number on the back of your card. And if it's a genuine call, they'll put you through to the department that's dealing with it. That's the only way you can really obviously be safe and sure that it's your bank that's calling you. But you're right, it's very difficult for us now to identify customers as well as you phoning in as well.
I'm very used to giving them the third and fourth or whatever characters on my password, but they don't seem to have that in reverse. So if you do, well done to you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Also, I think though that technology is getting a lot better now, and voice recognition is really come on leaps and bounds. If you were a NatWest customer and you phoned us up, we'd probably have a little chat with you on the phone, and that's not because we're being nice; it's because we're collecting information about your voice. Apparently, it's about 137 different characteristics now that the AI uses. So again, the technology will be, if we're going to phone up and speak to Mr. Priddy, basically just by his voice, our computers will say, yeah, that's your man. And then you'll find it become much more streamlined. It's like when customers are now phoning us up, if they've been identified through the voice recognition, then it's much more just a straightforward conversation rather than you having to go through the third degree to get any information from the bank. So again, the data, the technology is coming better, but the crooks are going to get hold of it at some stage. So again, it's always a battle, I think, between the good guys and the bad guys.
Thank you, Mark. Does anybody else have any questions?
I've got one just slightly off centre, but the new contactless card, which has gone up to £100, I believe. How risky is that? Can people limit the amount they want to have on their card, or how at risk are we with this new £100 limit if it's lost or cloned?
That's a really good question. I think our bank at the moment is £45 is the limit on that one. I've got my contactless card here. I never used to like contactless cards because this is my wallet. I've got my Oyster card there and a couple of pound notes in the back. But the technology for the contactless card and the Oyster card are the same one. So if I'm getting on a bus or going on the tube and I'm tapping in with my card in there, I could be duplicating the price of the journey. So I always had to take it out. Now, I know that we were trialing a new type of card that was using biometrics with contactless, whereby on here you've got the little chip, but on here we would have like a biometric thumb plate, whereby we'd put my thumb on it and then I would tap. So therefore, the bank could actually have a much higher transaction limit because it was confirming who I was. So if someone stole my card, they'd have to steal my thumb as well to use it. But again, each bank is slightly different with regards to technology. But the one thing I would say that I'm in favour of contactless is that if someone steals this, the most they can get off my card is £100. It's basically, there's a trigger point whereby the system will ask you to put it into the chip and pin device and type in your PIN code. Now, most of us probably won't recognise that because we might go and buy a coffee one day, the next day we might buy a newspaper, but then the third day we might do our weekly food shop. So therefore, the amount that we're spending will be over the contactless limit. So therefore, we probably not noticing, oh, we just put it in, think, oh, the machine's not working, I have to put in the chip and pin. So it becomes like sort of not so much noticeable. Now, if I'm a crook and I see Mark Mullally with his plastic card here, if he snatches it out of my hand and runs down the street, the most he could get away with is £100 by tapping small amounts or by just trying to get, as much as you can, as quick as you can. However, though, if I'm a crook and I see Mark Mullally with his debit card and I see his PIN number, because I'm buying a cash point machine, I'm putting my PIN number into a device, that card automatically becomes £750. That's my daily cash card limit on my card. So the crook needs to have the plastic, but the PIN number as well combined to get that money. So the more I can use by tapping, the more secure I am. So that's why I'm more in favour of contactless. But I know different banks are using slightly different technologies at the moment. Hence, some of the banks are at 100, some at 45, some possibly still at 30. But I think as the technology improves, this will become better all the time. But yeah, at the moment, we've still got the very basic one. But I think you'll find that biometrics will come more into play over the next 2 or 3 years.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah. Can I ask a quick one? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm getting a bit over cautious. And recently I got a new phone and I transferred all the apps from the old phone to the new phone. And one of the apps was Barclaycard, where you can look up your statement and so on. But when I tried to use it on the new phone, it said I had to re-register. And it wanted the card number and so on, but it also asked for my PIN. And I thought that was unusual, so I didn't sort of complete the process. Do you think that sounds reasonable?
I would double check the Barclays. I mean, if I was to download the app onto my phone now, basically with the bank's mobile banking apps and the online banking, they're two halves of the same coin. So basically, when I download the app onto my phone, I have to put in my online registration identification. With NatWest, it's a 10-digit number, first 6 is my date of birth and 4 random numbers at the end. It will then ask me to put in part of my PIN code and part of my password, but not the full ones. But then once I've got the app on the phone, then I just can either use my face, my fingerprint, or just afford a 5 PIN code. But I think the registration process will probably need that PIN number and password. But also you need to make sure that your mobile telephone number is correct on their bank systems, because they'll send you a confirmation or they'll ask you to put in an authorization code to link your phone to your account effectively.
I see, yeah.
Was it your card PIN or was it your online PIN they were asking for?
The one that I would use in a cash machine.
And an ATM?
Yeah.
That does sound a bit odd, because normally it's your online PIN that it would be asking for, not for. So it's definitely worth checking with the bank, as Mark said, to check to see what their system requests.
Actually, maybe I misunderstood it. Perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe that is what they were asking.
Yeah, because you're trying to log into like an online system. So it's usually whenever you set up your online banking, you've had a PIN for that. It will be that they're requesting probably.
Yes, it could be that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have another look.
Because the ATM pin's the ATM pin, really. That's just for payments.
That's why I thought it was unusual. Yes.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's probably just a pin's a pin, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
One thing I would add about the mobile banking app as well is that we mentioned about text messages and about these alpha tags, where it becomes very difficult to confirm a genuine text and a faked text. With the banks now, they're actually sending messages through the mobile banking app called push notifications. They'll sort of pop up on the screen similar to a text message, but they're actually sent via the app. So you can confirm that that message has been sent by your bank rather than Mark pretending to be your bank. So again, that's something to look at as well.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, question from Jerry.
Hello, John, it's Mike. I got a new phone as well, and I had exactly the same thing without the PIN, but what I actually did was I went into the various banks that we had the accounts with and got them to set them all up for me again on the new phone. That way you knew that it was the bank doing it properly and it wasn't, like you said, a suspicious one. And then what they actually do is they also set you up for face identification and voice identification. So if you ever ring up, your voice is your password. And if you ever go on your app, you just have to look at it and it identifies you and gets you straight in. But I felt a lot more comfortable going into the banks and getting them to do it than fiddling around myself. Because the banks are still open, so you can still do that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Also, if you go to your bank's website, they'll probably have little videos and stuff there as well to show you how to do that. So again, if you're not able to get down to the branch, have a look at the bank website. But all the banks are pushing this technology. So therefore, they're trying to be as helpful as they can to get customers up and running. But if you're not comfortable doing it yourself, as Mike said, speak to your bank. They'll be more than happy to help.
Hi, can I ask a question to Mark? In Tony's original question, he asked about the limit on your card on the card reader. Now, can you set a lower limit than the £100 or 45 that NatWest charge? Can you get the bank to set it, say, 30 and keep
at the moment, no. But what you can do is that on my app, if I open it up now, I don't know if it's going to let me do it, but I can actually turn off the functions on my debit card. So my debit card, if I don't want it to be used online, I can switch that. I can toggle that part off. If I don't want it to be used as a contactless card, I can toggle that part on and off. I'll just see if I can show you on here. Manage my card. Card payment controls. Yeah, so I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but there's a number of options there that allow me to do things in person or contactless. But with the technology coming through, it's giving the customer more control over how they want to use their banking facilities. So there's all sorts of things there. I can set sort of limits for certain things, but I don't think I can switch to contactless. I decide that's all or nothing at the moment. I can't actually amend the limits.
But it does mean if you did lose your card that you could instantly turn it off so that somebody couldn't use it.
Yeah, I'm with NatWest. I know I've seen this application. I also have a NatWest credit card, which I use mainly with family in the States. If I want to buy, as we did last week, Easter eggs for them through an Amazon.com account.
Yeah.
It was 40 odd pounds sterling, working out about $57. They paused the payment until they cleared it with me. So they came back and asked if I had instigated this account.
Yeah, that's good.
It's quite good.
Yeah, and obviously with the app, you can have your credit card on there as well, so you can see all of your accounts and again control the card like that. But it's always the best idea is to use a credit card online because that's sort of away from your bank account. It's not going to have any impact on your day-to-day money if something does go wrong or somebody else gets hold of it. So it's a great idea to have a credit card set up for that, and we would advise that for all online purchases.
Oh, thank you.
Or it's me again. You mentioned about if you lose your contactless card, where do you get the telephone number from to cancel your card? Because it's on the back of the card if you haven't got it. How do you who do you contact?
So put it in your phone for a start, but you can find it on the website or on your statement. There normally is one number. Normally we've got one number for NatWest. I'm sure the other banks are the same, and you can do everything on that one number. But yeah, you're right. If you lose the card, the number's gone with it. But just pop it in your mobile under bank.
Thank you.
Just on that point as well, if you get a phone call from the telephone number that's on the back of your bank card, that should be a red flag, because crooks are trying to convince you that they're phoning from the banks. They say, well, if you look at the back of your card to see that number. Now, you'll find that most banks will phone you on a withheld number. So again, it's the nuisance ones. I don't know who that is. I'm not going to answer. Probably going to be your bank. But if you get an incoming call and it's got that telephone number that's on the back of your bank card, yeah, be mindful, because as I say, it's probably not going to be your bank. Just to let you know, though, as well, is that something I came across just a couple of weeks ago is called silent stealing. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. The crooks are going for small sums of money now, rather than trying to sort of steal tens of thousands of pounds, although they will still continue to do that. They're trying to steal £10 off 100,000 people all in one go. The reason being is that you're less likely to report it, so they're under the radar of the police. And also it becomes more complicated from the banks to see whether or not if it's a genuine transaction or not. So again, I know that myself and Sally have been talking about fairly large sort of sums with the scams that are happening. That's basically just to keep people's interest. But again, it could be small sums of money they're looking to steal from people. Because if I reach out to 100,000 people, £10 each, that's £1 million for me. So again, just be mindful of that. It's not necessarily the amount that should be the first warning sign. Any other questions? Okay. Very briefly, passwords. You need to have a different password for every website that you visit, because basically most people will log in now with their email address. To get someone's email address is very, very easy. But if I know Sally's email address and one of her passwords that she uses for Facebook, I can then possibly try Amazon. I could possibly try eBay. I could possibly try numerous other websites that I think she may perhaps visit. And if she uses the same password for every single one, I'm in. And either I'm going to try and get hold of her money or just collect a little bit more information about her. So we say you have a different password for every website that you visit. Now you think I've got 15 different websites I go to, that's 15 different passwords. What we say, you can either get a password manager. A lot of phones actually store them on there for you already, or a good old-fashioned notebook, and just write it down and lock the book away somewhere safe in a drawer, but then disguise what the password is. So for instance, Amazon, if I put it in my notebook, I'm going to call it Peru or something that's going to remind me of Amazon. It's not going to mean much to somebody else. So that little things like that, the longer the password, the better. Most commonly used passwords still at the moment is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Apparently 7 million people in the world are still using that. And if you use the word password but change an A for a 4 and a 5 for an S and all of that, that's on a list of known passwords. You need to come up with something completely unique, because I'm a crook, I'm running software with all the known passwords at the moment. It only takes me a couple of seconds to run 10,000 passwords. And if you're using your favourite football team, which might be Arsenal or whatever, bang, I'm in. What we do, I'm sitting in a room here at the moment. I can see a red chair, a clock, and a sheaf of paper. So if I was to use red clock sheaf, I guarantee it would be a lot harder for a hacker to run software on, because it's probably going to be unique. Then if I change that password slightly by perhaps putting a pound sign at the end and a question mark at the beginning, or substitute a couple of letters and numbers in between, again, that's going to be harder for them to do. There's a really good website called How Secure Is My Website. And it's more a bit of fun, but just give you an understanding how you can design your own passwords. It's designed by an American guy called Troy. I can never remember his surname now, but he's one of these cyber crime experts, gurus in America. And basically what it is, you can put a password in and it will tell you how long it will take a hacker to hack that, from nanoseconds to centuries. And again, you just play around with it. I wouldn't put any of your genuine passwords in there, because I've never met Troy, so I don't know how genuine he really is. But go in there, play around with 3 random words, see what comes up. So again, things like that will actually keep you safe and secure. If you've had something on the news whereby British Airways, Marriott Hotel, whoever's had their data hacked, you need to go in and change your password straight away. And again, if you're using that password for other websites, change that as well, because someone somewhere will have hold of this data. And it might be 6 months down the line, but they might contact you and say, Mark, we've got all your data, got all your information to prove it, here's your last password. And if you haven't changed it, whatever, you think, well, don't they have it? So again, just passwords, again, very important piece of data and information. There's a really good website called getsafeonline.org. Basically, it's the go-to website for any information you want to know about computers, mobile phones, anything like that at all. Malware, spyware, firewalls, all this other stuff. You go on to Get Safe Online, all very small bite-sized portions, about 3 or 4 paragraphs each, all in very clear, plain English. There's no jargon or technical stuff. It's a great resource just to dip your toes into the water if you want to know a bit more about what sort of stuff you need to keep yourself safe and secure online.
Anything else?
All I would suggest is that basically go away, have a look at some of the websites that myself and Sally have mentioned. You might pick up bits and pieces of information. It might be 1 or 2 bits of information you give to somebody else that might keep them safe and protected. The main thing is talk, to share information, to share stories. That's the thing we'd really encourage people to do. Because as Sally said, only 5% of people are reporting this. A lot of people are embarrassed. I think they've been duped. I think there might be people that might think they're stupid. They don't want to worry family and friends. So again, we're trying to make it sort of common knowledge. Now, this is happening on a day-by-day basis. This is organised criminals. These guys are very, very good at what they do. And people shouldn't be embarrassed about it. We need to encourage people, A, to report it, but share information to stop themselves falling into the trap in the first place.
Well, again, thank you to Sally and Mark. Excellent talk. Lots in there to think about. I was interested with the idea of the connecting the passwords, Amazon and Peru. We had a speaker recently, Nick Brazil, who spoke about his journey through Peru. So
very topical then.
Appropriate. I will forward, if you send me papers or addresses.
Yeah, I'm just doing it now for you, so I'll send you the email.
Yeah, and I'll pass it on to Martin, who holds the key to all our email addresses.
Yeah, no problem.
Again, though, don't panic. Don't worry about anything we said. Don't go in, oh goodness, now where do I start? Basically, just give yourself that 5 minutes to think about what's happening, what's being asked of you, what are you giving away. If someone was to come up to you in the street and ask you for that piece of data or that piece of information, would you do it? So again, no matter how urgent it might seem, nothing is life and death urgent when it comes to finances these days. The banks are open 24/7. We're very good at stopping fraud. We stop about, I think, 2 out of every £3 of attempted fraud. What we're not so good at is the scams, because the customer are making the payment themselves. And so therefore, we're trying to work out, does this fit our customer's profile or not? Hence, that's why we're sending out messages now. Can you confirm you've made this payment before we actually release the funds? But again, it's not enough. These guys are still stealing too much money at the end of the day.